So I'd like to welcome you again. Again, my name is Eric Reeves. I'm the Managing Director at Duchossois Capital Management. I've been with the family for 12 years, and I am co-chair of the legal forum for the Executives Club, which is why I have the honor of hosting this event tonight. So we have a very distinguished panel here today to talk to you about family business, both the operations and the intricacies of being a part of the family business. So I'm very excited about that. There will be a Q&A led by Andrew Kite from Loyola Quinlan School of Business. He has a few questions for us, but just like the family business that are often dynamic, this conversation will be much more fulfilling if you guys ask questions as we go and even at the end. If you have a question, ask it, because I'm sure it's probably going to be something that Andrew has for us as well. And if it's on your mind, it's on someone else's mind, it'd be great to have a dialogue as opposed to us just talking at you. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Andrew.
Great, thank you very much. I'm Andrew Kite. I'm the clinical professor in family business at Loyola University Chicago, and I've been working with families. I'm also a third-generation family business owner myself, so I have both a personal and professional perspective on this whole conversation. We have three great panelists here who have wide-ranging experiences, and we'll hear how they kind of leverage the family business advantage and how they run and operate their businesses. And I think there are a lot of lessons that all businesses can learn from our panel here today. So I'll ask each of them to just say a little bit about their family business history, and the role that they're playing in the family enterprise. So start with Liz Uline.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So Jimmy Carter was president way back in 1980-something, and my husband got a new boss after 11 years, and he didn't want the guy to quit. And interest rates were 18%. So not many of you can remember in this room interest rates at 18%. And so then he was home. And I was a happy woman in Lake Forest. I always say there's nothing better than a Lake Forest housewife and maybe a Lake Forest dog. But he couldn't type. And interest rates were 18. He was going to go out and buy a manufacturing firm, and that didn't, nothing was moving. Nothing was moving. So he got this direct mail piece, and so he couldn't type. And then we got a thing, and we did some direct mail for 10,000 pieces. You know, in this little product we still sell today. And then it kind of took off from there with a lot of hard work. And so 18 years later, we have a lot of good people, and 11 or 12 locations around North America, and we're over $5 billion in sales now last year. So it grew with a lot of hard work and being in America.
Great, thanks. Marty?
My name is Marty Ozinga, and I'm joined by another Marty Ozinga. My dad's back there, Marty Ozinga, and my brother Carl's here too. So family business all around. We're 90 years last year we celebrated, and we're really proud of that. My great-grandfather, Martin Ozinga Sr., started the company in the southwest side. He was a motorcycle riding police deputy in the Cook County in the 1920s, and decided that wasn't a great job for him and his 5 kids, so he decided to start a business in the coal delivery business. And it ended up, over time, became building materials and building materials delivery, and our main business now is building materials and supplying concrete. And the good news with this beautiful building, it's Ozinga concrete, so we don't have anything to worry about here, so we're really proud of that too. I'm in the family business. I'm the president of the company. I took over from my dad in 2012, 7 years ago. And I'm joined in the 4th generation of ownership with my 5 brothers and 1 cousin. And between the 7 of us, we have 32 kids. So the next generation's coming up fast. The oldest is 16, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to figure all that out.
So our next panelist is Eric Reeves from the Duchossois Group, and brings a unique perspective as being a non-family executive. And what we know is that non-family executives are playing a more and more important role in businesses. So Eric,
I am not a Duchossois.
They should be so lucky to have you.
So as Mike mentioned, the Duchossois family has been in business for 100 years here in Chicago. They've had a variety of manufacturing concerns over that 100-year period. I will briefly touch on the highlights. The first being Thrall Car, which is on the south side of Chicago, which was a small rail car repair shop in Chicago Heights that Dick Duchossois and the family grew to be the second largest manufacturer of rail cars in North America. Along the way, as a diversification for their wealth, they owned and operated a variety of different businesses, including businesses in manufacture of munitions and projectiles for the Department of Defense, and notably for you all here in Chicago, acquired Arlington Racetrack in the 80s and merged that with Churchill Downs, and had a controlling interest at Churchill Downs for a number of years. Today, the family's in their fourth generation, and the business is comprised of one large operating business in Oak Brook, Illinois, called Chamberlain. Chamberlain is the largest manufacturer of garage door openers, commercial door openers, gate openers. We have a gate distribution business as well as a Doc Leveler business, all under that umbrella. The core business being the garage door opener business goes to market under the brands Chamberlain, LiftMaster, and private label Craftsman. We did for many years with Sears. The one thing that was announced at CES earlier this year is that we also have a relationship with Amazon. So this is my commercial. You might want to retrofit your garage door opener or buy a new one so that you can have your packages delivered to your garage instead of your front stoop. We'll have more about that later. That's all I'll say for now, and we'll get into the conversation.
Very, very cool. Thank you. So one of the, when people ask me what I do and I say family business, a lot of people think small business, and obviously we can see here that we're not talking about small business. We're talking about very sophisticated companies with highly professional management teams and operations. Now, you have family throughout the organization. How do you deal with some of the family dynamics? What are some of the most challenging family dynamics that you have to deal with?
Well, it depends upon the era. Okay, we have a catalog. When we were smaller, Dick and I almost killed one another about what product was going in. We don't worry about that anymore. There's my brother-in-law, who's kind of the numbers guy. My husband was kind of like salesy, and it turned out I was marketing and ops. So that part gets along pretty well. But my brother-in-law never could give a job review to anybody, and he's really, really smart, and he's figured it out because he's not in the office about 6 months out of the year. And I go to the office every day, so go figure. And then we have 3 kids. We do have 9 grandchildren, but they're younger. And so one in Atlanta, one in Minneapolis, and one here. And the kids our daughter did work for us, and she's not doing that now. And then the Minnesota one's more warehousey, and the one I think you knew, he's more of a merchant. But this isn't easy. I really admire you, Marty. I don't know how you do it. I mean, it's not easy.
I don't work with my spouse either.
Yeah. Well, as we see, the challenges of the generations can be very different, while many of the themes that you'll hear from family business to family business are similar. So, Marty, how do you deal with having so many family members in the company, and what are some of the challenges that you face?
I think well, first of all, we talk in terms of we're a family, and there's a lot of family members in our business, but there's a lot of families who are not our families who are in business. Multi-generations of families work for us, and siblings and uncles and aunts and cousins. And so there's complications, there's positives and negatives to all those kind of things. If someone's a poor performer, or, God forbid they steal or something, all of a sudden you're faced with, terminating a family member of our own or somebody else. And, those things do happen at times, and it makes it really that much more emotional and difficult. But we've really come at it from our generation in particular, is that, hey, so goes our relationship with each other, so goes the company. If we don't have a good, healthy relationship with each other, the whole company is going to go off the rails, and there's just a lot of livelihoods on the line with us getting along with each other. So we've committed to at least once a month kind of getting in the boardroom and saying, we're going to close the door and not just talk about business, but we're going to talk about how are you doing, what can be well, how are you doing as a husband and a father? What are you dealing with? What can we be praying for? Someone usually leads a devotion, and then we just spend some time praying with each other. And it's really built, I think, a lot of, first of all, there's a vulnerability that takes place. Sometimes we get so busy, things just sneak in, jealousy or things, and this kind of disarms us, and I think it's really been sort of the secret sauce for us to find out how we can get along with each other, and just realizing that the stakes are so high if we don't.
Well, the interesting that you bring up there is how you're kind of nurturing your family relationships with your brothers and having these meetings. And the emerging research is showing that it's actually the fabric of the family relationships that correlates with successful transition in family businesses. While we all talk about succession planning in relation to family business, succession planning isn't correlated with successful transition. It's how we nurture the fabric of family relationships so that we can make the right decisions on behalf of both the family and the business. So it's great to hear that you're doing that. So Eric, how do you end up interacting with the family world, and how do you get your mission from a family that has a lot of different opinions and probably emotions about what's going on?
Right, so the remainder of the story is I told you about the operating business in Oak Brook. When I joined, the family had 5 operating businesses. We had employees all over the world, and we had 5 operating businesses. And the family realized, to their credit, that as they were maturing and entering the 4th generation, that 1, they wanted to free up some liquidity, and 2, they needed to have a peaceful transition, if you will, for succession, so that it was a successful transition and not just a transition. And so with that, we embarked upon selling 4 of the 5 operating businesses, and did family interviews, every generation, to see what was next. And that was the creation of Duchess Walk Capital Management. They said we want to free up some liquidity, but we want to stay together as a family. We want to continue to own and operate businesses, but in a different format. And that was the genesis of Duchess Walk Capital Management. And so, to answer your question more directly, through that process of the family, we use third party, but and having interviews of all of the generations and saying, how do you view the family business? How do you view your legacy? How do you think about your relationships with your cousins and with your children, and their relationships with your nieces and nephews, and then the business. And out of that, we had some consensus, and you also got to know the mandate, if you will, in terms of what was next for the family and how we could assist in helping them realize that vision.
And you highlight something that's really interesting, that family businesses can pivot from one operating business to other businesses at times when they're nimble and the family's unified about what we're trying to do. And indeed, if you look at families that have survived for 200 years or more, often they're not in the businesses that they started with, because many of them may have started in a more agrarian economy and moved into other areas. So, part of that is leadership development and making sure that we have the leadership that we need in each generation. So I'm curious, as we have different generations represented here, Liz, how do you think about helping the next generation develop themselves as leaders, and how are you thinking about if and when you're going to transition to the next generation? As I did
well,
say,
I'm just going to be brutally honest with you, okay? That if it was, I was thinking about my stocks today, okay? I have Kraft Heinz, I've got Boeing, and what's the other disaster? GE. So they can't figure out management succession. Well, come on, it's tough. And when we started, we were nothing, okay? And I remember Andrew, and we were tiny, and being accepted at the Loyola Family Business was a big deal for us. And so you wouldn't hire me today, the Lake Forest housewife, to be COO of a company, because I'm really very entrepreneurial. And so you have these kids, and we have great kids. They're really good parents and good kids, and they're not lazy. But what are the qualifications to run $1 billion a company? What's the qualification? Let's be serious. So we're talking a lot about, well, I hired one guy once, okay? He was going to be my successor. The first day he was in the sauna, and we were looking for him. And I've never been in the sauna at Uline. So, you know how long that one lasted, that was gone. And so then Brian, our son, says, well, you know, you've been retiring now for 20 years, and, you know, we're going to make another try at it. But, you know, it's tough business, okay? It's a family business. It's not public. We're doing great, but it's not that easy to find people. But I'm thinking, should we sell GE, Boeing, and Kraft Heinz right now? Because they've slopped it up badly, right? I thought Buffett owned the world, right? That's my comment.
A colleague of mine says you can judge the strength of a company about can it survive 3 bad successions.
Yeah.
And if it can survive 3 bad successions, it's a pretty strong company. So, how is leadership development dealt with in the Duchess Walk? How do you cultivate leadership both in the family and non-family?
So we're going through that now. Dick Duchessois, our patriarch, is 97. His son Craig, our CEO of the enterprise, the holding company, is 75 this year. The next family member in line, so to speak, the oldest is 45. And so we have 7 third-generation family members, 3 of which who have raised their hand to say, you know, I'd like to be a part of the family business in a more meaningful way. And so 2 of them are at the operating business, putting in work. I mean, they're getting a salary and carrying the bag and working their way up the ranks, and you know, their pressure to be successful in those roles, I'm saying pressure, that's my interpretation, is probably significant, but they're earning their stripes. The third has decided to participate in the family business in a different way, and she is the president of the family foundation. And so through those operating roles, they're learning sort of the leadership legacies of their grandfather and their father and uncle in those instances. They have also joined our board of directors. We have a robust board of directors. We have 12 members on our board of directors, 6 family members and 6 independent directors, executives around town who you all would know. And so they're also being mentored in that capacity in terms of what it means to be a good shareholder, what it means to be a good director, and what it means to be a good family member. And so we're in the process of educating the next generation, if you will, about the business. Through the family council that they have been learning about the family business their entire lives. And there's been education about wealth and succession issues along the way that they also bring to that experience of trying to be a more meaningful part of the business.
Well, that's great, because I think it highlights that there are many different ways to contribute as a leader in a family business. We tend to focus myopically on who's the next CEO, but in family, people can lead in a lot of different ways, whether it's the foundation, leading at the family level, or leading in the business operations. And indeed, there are often leadership gaps that have to be filled by non-family members. And having a family that can be adaptable and have boundaries that accept that, I think is really important. Marty, how is leadership development dealt with in your role?
I think when we first started the company, it was sort of like, there's a shovel, go learn how to operate it kind of thing. In other words, it was sort of, roll up your sleeves and get to work and start at the bottom and, learn, get in other people's shoes that work at the company and know what they're up against. That was starting to work, but I think a lot of it's much before that. It starts at home. And, seeing my dad go to work and enjoy his work and see that he's passionate about that obviously inspired us to want to go work there. And so we think of it the same way. If we go home every day and we're miserable, well, what child would even think to want to go to that place of work? In fact, some parents would say, I don't want you going there. And the moms at home too, they have a huge impact on raising the kids and the work ethic and how you treat each other and how you treat your cousins and all that kind of thing. So I think a lot of it is at home. It starts at home. We have a once a month get together with all the cousins, and they can't wait for that to happen. They all love getting together, so a lot of it's just building relationships with each other, learning how to get along with one another, and it's just enjoying being together and finding fun things for them to do. And then as far as development, my dad was quoted in our 75th anniversary documentary, something along the lines of, throw them in the deep end of the pool, but be close enough, give them enough rope but not to hang themselves, kind of thing. So we were given a tremendous amount of responsibility at a very young age, and maybe more than what we should have been given in some respects from some academic standard of sorts. But it made us grow up really, really fast and learn on the job really quickly and just sort of cut our teeth that way.
I mentioned before that succession planning, the research doesn't correlate it with successful transitions. The three things that are always correlated with successful transitions are family meetings or family councils, boards of directors, and strategic planning, because they're all processes through which we set expectations and achieve expectations and allow us to adapt over time. I'm curious, part of the dynamics that governance structure helps to manage is the dynamic between family members working for the business and family members not working for the business. How does that show up at Ozinga in terms of communication between family members who aren't in the business day to day and family members who are?
It's an interesting question because, for us, we have, my parents had 6 sons and no girls, and we all went to work in the company. And so in some respects, it makes it a little bit complicated because we all have wives that grew up in different households, and they all have different worldviews and different perspectives. So when it comes to family members who are part of our family, certainly our spouses are part of our family, of course, and so, but we don't have family shareholders that are not working in the business. A lot of companies do. I've kind of sort of grown to think in terms of the group our size, with 32 in the next generation, that we're preparing ourselves to have good governance and boundaries about what it means to be an owner and what hat you're wearing. So we always have to be mindful. Are you wearing your owner's hat? Are you wearing your management hat or a family hat? And be clear about which one you're wearing. And so just because you're an owner doesn't mean you can pop in and say, well, I don't care for the paint color on the wall in the office. Well, that's not that's not a privilege that you get to speak into, and just making sure that you have good, clear, proactive boundaries about what your roles and responsibilities and your rights and privileges are.
So Eric, you mentioned the family council that the Duchossois family has. How does the family council communicate with the business, with you as a non-family leader in the enterprise?
So the family council rotates their president every 2 or 3 years. I think it's a 2-year term, and you can serve it 3 times. And that president often attends some sort of board meeting or has an independent session with Mike and me to learn more about the business, and then communicates back to the family. And the important thing about that is that obviously Dick and Craig, who are in the business on a daily basis, they're executives in the company, they can show up to family council and tell them all about the business. They don't talk about the business at family council. It's the non-executive shareholders that go and get the feedback, understand the business, and then translate it in terms of how they understand it, and bring it back in the ways in which they think it's important to the family, which usually aligns with what Dick and Craig would say, but they also have their own sort of color on it. And so that's the conduit from the business to the remaining shareholders. And we also have an annual shareholder meeting where we put on a dog and pony show and talk about our investments.
Great. So Liz, they talk about the advantage of being a family business.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think about the advantages that you have as a family business from a competitive standpoint in terms of competing in business
Well,
environments?
when I grew up in Winnetka, my dad worked for a public company, which was easier then than it is today with the earnings per share. But he'd come home at night, and he didn't really want to say hello to his two little girls. He wanted to talk to my mother about the politics of the business, of which there were a lot, and they were railroad cars too. It was called North American Car. I think it went to Flying Tiger, I don't know, whatever. But I grew up listening to a lot of that chit chat and all the politics. So in the business, you know, that Dick and I started, we don't have those politics, and that's really nice. And we take the money and we've invested heavily in the company to grow the company. You know, I mean, it was a really big deal. We started here, and then we got something in Minneapolis, and then we got something on the West Coast. So we're half the time, I think we buy concrete from you all. You told me that, right? And so we don't have all that worry. So that part's really true. That part's true. Okay, but we've got some strong-minded family members here. You know, it's really interesting when you talk to the generations about, so I might like the catalog, they might do the web, you know, what's the value of Facebook for business, you know, all that type of thing is different today. You know, so we get in a lot of conversations about where we're going to allocate our resources for advertising, stuff like that.
Now, Marty, your local relationships in building relationships with your partners, when you're trying to expand, how does that help you in terms of your approach to a new market, your relationship approach?
Well, our product is unique. Ready-mix concrete, you put it in a mixer truck, and the nature of the product, a chemical reaction starts taking place as soon as you put it in the truck, and we actually timestamp the ticket, and the clock starts ticking down from the time we make it to the time it has to be put down. So we're making a product that's has to be put down within 20 minutes or so of where we make it. So by nature of the product, the relationship is a very localized relationship. So we've as we've grown, we really insisted that our salespeople and all our people that we hire are from the local community, because they have these connections with people. So, you know, a lot of times someone went to high school with a customer, or they cheer for the same sports team or whatever. So if we go into northern Indiana, you know, they talk a little bit different, and they went to different high schools and all that kind of thing. So we've made sure that it's Northwest Indiana people who are working there, because they have lifelong relationships with the people, our customers, and the local towns and villages and whatnot. And wherever we've grown, we've kept that philosophy because it's really worked well for us. We compete in a large industry where now it's dominated by foreign multinationals, and we're sort of unique in that we've grown to this large size of be a family business, to the point where we're one of the largest family concrete and materials businesses in the country. It's not because we're so big either, it's because there's none left really of our size, because they've been bought up by all these foreign multinationals. So we really try to capitalize. It's just a different philosophy that they have versus we have, as far as the local relationships and being here to stay with the community and with the customers and with our coworkers, and it really resonates in a way that is difficult to measure, but it's huge.
Well, and actually, Edelman Public Relations has what they call the trust index, and they have a family business component of their trust index, and they found that both in B2B and business to consumer, customers believe in and trust family businesses at a higher level than they do multinationals. So, and I think that comes down to some of those relationships and the values. So, so Eric, values obviously are a very important part of a family business. How have the values of the Duchossois family kind of influenced your career development, and what advice would you have for others in thinking about employment with a family business?
Those are two very different questions. So
that's why they pay me the big bucks.
All right. So let me answer the first one first, and they're obviously they're related, but family values. Craig told me the day I accepted the offer, like my handshake is my bond, and that's how you are authorized to go out in the market and do deals and do transactions. And if we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it. So you better be damn sure that we can do it before you say that we can. You're going to make mistakes, but we're going to honor our word. I think another important value is the family's not chasing the dollar. They've been in business 100 years and they've been very fortunate, but it's always putting the customer first, the employees first, making sure that our products, or our offerings, or our deals are top-notch. Integrity is a word that is easy to use and you put on the website, but I have seen that play out in many, many scenarios working with the family. And so that informs our business dealings to a great, just period, it informs our business dealings. The example that I like to use in terms of how it translates into business, in 2008 when everything went to hell in a handbasket, we had some businesses, one business in particular that had huge fixed costs. And so when things dropped off, things got really bad, and we had trouble with, we were going to have trouble with bank covenants. We don't use a lot of debt and leverage in our businesses, but in this one we did. We wanted to grow it, and 2008 came out of nowhere for this business, and the family just ponied up and just paid off the bank. I said, listen, you're having a lot of trouble with a lot of other banks, and with a lot of other customers. We don't need to be one of them, and we want to focus on our business and do the right thing and not march to these covenants, because we believe that business can grow. We grew the business. Eventually, we sold it to Samsung we sold it to Harman, and then Samsung bought Harman. But it was a great outcome. But it was not being publicly traded, not having to march to earnings per share, not having to be beholden to the banks to say we want to take it. And now we call those banks for different deals and different transactions, and they're the first ones at the table to help us out. And so that's how the values have transcended into our business team.
So I have another question, but please, if there are questions in the audience, please, we'd love to hear from folks in the audience as well. So Liz, how are you thinking about passing the values that you and Dick have started the organization with, and how have you taught them both the family and non-family?
Well, the kids are pretty, our children, they're pretty good about that. I mean, we have, like you, we have the same type of values, and we have a speed, passion, operational excellence on kind of the lighter side. But a few years ago, we're kind of strict with the dress code. And they put up a lot of, employees, this dress code, everybody's going casual. We're not talking about that at all today. Things like that. And flexibility, you can work at home. Well, we tried that, we didn't think that worked too well. Show up. But we're not hearing that, maybe in IT a little bit, So there's other issues now, because we've got the millennials whose life is experience. Where my father had 2 jobs his whole career, and my husband has 2. So I was saying today, another thing, because, okay, is one baby boomer work ethic, do you have to hire 2 millennials? So, I don't know if that has to do with values. The values are kind of given at Uline, and the dress code's kind of given, but we're dealing with, where we busted ourselves to do the best thing. You hire these kids out of college, and then 6 years later, they're saying, I'm on to the next experience, I want to thank you very much. And so we're dealing, I've got a thing where everybody's over 60, it's working for Uline, and really, because we've had just, like a core of 100 people that have built the company, and they're starting to retire, and we're having dinner parties in the prime, that type of thing. So let me know, is it 2 millennials equals 1 baby boomer?
I don't even want to do the math with Gen Y, so.
I hear they're better, I haven't seen them.
Hi, a question for probably more Liz and Marty, but have you been faced in your journeys with the opportunity to sell the company, and what was kind of the decision tree that you as a family worked through to decide not to?
I think the answer is how many calls you get a day.
Well, yeah, that.
Listen, I'm not working this hard to sell it. You're not doing it for money. You have to have a love and a passion. I always think about the time when we started, and Dick likes to duck hunt. I do not. Okay? We're down in Henry, Illinois. If any of you been there? What cold place. Okay? So we're in this duck hunting thing, and he's out there hunting. I don't want to go out in that thing. The only place that was warm in this town was a laundromat. And so I was in the laundromat working while he's out duck hunting. I mean, you'd have to be certified crazy. Okay, so what? We have enough money. Well, you know, if money's good to have enough to be comfortable, but after that, you got to have a sheer passion for it. Okay, so they call, and like Virginia McCaskey, you know, that's what I say. You know, wait till I'm gone.
Martin, do you want to think about that?
To your point, we get these calls or letters, you know, multiple a week, but we really try to encourage our generation and think for the next generation too, to think about ourselves as stewards of it for a period of time. We're not looking to scale it and time it just right to sell it, and it's really freeing for me to sit in front of our coworkers, whether it's their first day or people who've been here for 25 years, just to let them know that we have no interest in selling or getting out or whatever. We're here, we're staying in it, and the money we make, we're going to reinvest back in the company. So our goal is to really, Lord willing, to pass it to the next generation and give them an opportunity to steward it for a while too. So we don't think about selling.
And an interesting fact that we get from research of these 200-year-old family businesses is that the financial success is necessary but not sufficient to get over that hurdle. That you need that sense of pride and identity and status that comes from being a part of this business, that sense of hard work and commitment to the people, the community, etc. That's what gets you through, as well as your family relationships. We have a question over here.
Hi, I'm Margaret. I'm from the Executive Club. Thank you all for being here. So I was at another panel on Friday. There was a lot of talk about innovation. There's a panel of startups talking about how failure is almost celebrated in the startup community, and you try and fail is wonderful. And there was this really dynamic conversation about big companies and all wanting to instill a culture of innovation, but there's this, underlying statement of words. That you're not really encouraged to try things and fail in large companies. And I'd love to hear how that's playing out in the family business, especially with the legacy of here's how we've always done things, and so how has that inspired the family business to maybe try something new and toe that line and curious to hear how it works.
Just to paraphrase the question for those who were having trouble hearing it, the question was around innovation and failure, and how do you deal with innovation and failure. That startup organizations almost celebrate failure, and large corporations often are jittery around failure. How do you guys approach failure, dealing with failures here in business?
Well,
Innovation.
Trying something new
and innovative.
I would just say, most entrepreneurs or operators, you have to be wired that way. Like, I don't think business survives if you're not thinking that way. You just know. We've tried to make one of our values entrepreneurialism, which has been difficult to communicate sometimes, because how does that translate to everybody in the organization? But we try to tell stories that, but for making changes. As I said earlier, we were a coal delivery business. Coal phased out at some point. If we didn't pivot and make a change, we would have not been in business anymore. And in fact, my great-grandfather thought it was a bad idea for his sons to get into building materials, and he told them it was a really risky and a bad move. And so, but in the face of their dad telling them that, they did it anyway. So we try to tell these stories that encourage people to embrace change and see it as opportunity. And we're always investing in technology, and to your point though, I think it is difficult to figure out as you get larger. Try to fail. I don't tell people to try to fail, but if they take a risk and we make a mistake or it doesn't work out, it's not like we're jumping all over them and firing them because things didn't work out, when you clearly know where their heart is coming from and they're trying to do what's best for the company. So we've tried to create a culture where we're always trying to do things just a little bit different than we did yesterday, and it just kind of gets contagious.
I mean, for the Duchess Watt family, it's the name of the game. I told you our largest operating business is garage door opener. Okay, so motor on a stick, basically. But we had a 97-year-old and a 75-year-old leading the charge saying, let's figure out how we can open it with our phone. And so the garage door opener is probably, especially if you bought one in the last 5 years, probably one of the smartest appliances you have in your home. It can record transactions. I mean, we know more about you going in and out of your home, and that's the front door of the home, than you probably do, or some of your other family members. So for this family business, having pivoted from making rail cars to munitions to owning an internet security company, innovation is the name of the game and the way to stay relevant, and it is very much a part of our culture on a day-to-day basis.
Do you have any thoughts?
Let me flip it now to us, okay, because we're always doing all of the above. But let's take the Trump campaign, okay? All right? So we were just at a deal where they were discussing this stuff. And the younger generation, okay, says we don't need to do TV ads. We can text and email another, okay? So what do you think if you had a campaign and you didn't do TV ads? What do you all think? You're running for president.
That would miss some people.
Yeah, and so, but the boss stepped in and he likes TV. So it was kind of interesting to hear the struggle they're having where they're going to allocate their capital. And they're doing all this tech stuff, and marketing and all that type of thing. But Trump, the man, likes TV.
Yeah, I mean, there are vast differences in how the generations are sharing and receiving information, and multi-channel communication is still very important.
Here and there.
Dennis?
I think this is a question for Eric. From the standpoint that I believe you're dealing with ownership where you have active family members in the business and non-active family members in the business. So I'm wondering, how do you build cohesion within the family between those people? And what kind of issues have you faced between active family members and non-active family members in the business?
That's a good question. Did you all hear the question? Okay. So, I think what the family has been good about is, and I think Marty used this word, they are stewards of this wealth. They're stewards of these resources, the companies that they own, their employees. As Marty said, the employees have worked for the company for a long time. I've worked for the company for a long time. I have a family that the Duchess Watt family supports, and they take that very seriously. And so what they talk a lot about is the stewardship involved with being an owner and being a good shareholder, and the responsibility you have to be engaged and at least be informed. And so not everyone's going to want to come into the family business, and that's okay. They respect that. And I think the Family Council has been a good vehicle to allow people to express what their desires are. One of Craig's sisters said to me once, yeah, okay, well, we didn't work for it, but I also didn't ask for it. And so you guys have to help me help you be a good executive or a good leader on behalf of the company. I don't know what I'm supposed to do in that role, but I want to, because I want to help the rest of my family in this journey. And so, in sum, there's a lot of transparency about the business, telling them what they want to know, and communication. And the onus, they feel the onus to communicate with us just as much as we do to be open and transparent and communicate with them. So I don't know if that got at your question, but that's how we deal with it.
Yeah. So innovation was actually my question, but I'll ask it a little more direct and specific. How do you guys go about reinventing yourself to acquire new customers, right? Because your customers maybe 10 years ago aren't the same as they are today. How do you go about kind of reinventing your brand so you can acquire these clients, continue to acquire?
For us, I think the biggest change has been the digital market social media, our web, YouTube. You know, traditionally a B2B business wouldn't be doing much marketing because we say, well, we know who the customers are, they know who we are, but we've stepped up a whole department of communications and marketing, a much bigger spend than you'd think traditionally in certainly a concrete or materials business, and it's really been eye-opening to see the doors that are open from it. You know, I was sitting at a conference last year, and it was an international conference, and there was 10 people around the table, and all 10 of them were from a different country, and all 10 of them had seen a parade of trucks that we had put on our Facebook, because the leader of the conference liked it and made a comment. But all of a sudden I'm telling 10 people from 10 different countries all over the world who I am. Like, oh, I know you guys. You did the parade down to Florida with those concrete trucks. And I think there's just something, whether we like it or not, about celebrity and familiarity, and just that sort of the customer experience is well on its way long before you're meeting the person for the first time because of what they saw about you. They read your story on online or whatever. So I think the customer buying experience is well on its way already. And the other thing is, to Eric's point, is living in this Amazon world, living in this Uberized world, everybody's expecting their lives to operate that way. I want my information on my mobile device. I want to be able to order things on, and B2B needs to step up and figure out how, because that's people's expectation, whether you're renting a car or getting an airline ticket or a concert ticket. It's not going to change for any part of it, you know, whether you're in your concrete and all that kind of stuff. We need to keep moving to be just as up to speed with B2C as B2B. So that's, the customer experience is changing very fast, and that's between IT and marketing and communications. Those are the big, where our spending is just shooting through the roof, and sometimes it's hard because you don't know how to measure and what's the payback and all that kind of thing, but that's where it's changed radically in the last 10 years for us.
How many of you have a cable bill? Raise your hand. Not that many, right? Right? So I was in a lunch today with people, and they say, in the end, is cable going to go away? Right now, I think we're paying $1,200 a house, and we have various houses. And I said, that's a lot to watch Fox News. I was told, because a lot of you just don't bother with it, right?
Yeah.
So things like that, I'm always interested in that. The Google, we started out as a catalog company, but by the way, okay, if we have a product that is not in the catalog and just on the web, the sales are significantly less. So for us, we carpet bomb you with the catalog, then we're on the website and Google. The costs of Google are extremely expensive, and they're really a hard gig to deal with. And so when you talk about your advertising costs, and they're always changing it. So everybody's got vendors that, you know, you've got good vendors, partner vendors, and the ones that are tough. I think for us, Google's a very tough gig for us, and very expensive.
Here and then Russia.
Eric, you mentioned large board. I think you said 12 or 13, 6 of which are independent directors.
Yes.
For the other two panelists, I'm wondering, at what point did you decide, or have you decided, that having outside expertise, whether it's in an advisory capacity or a fiduciary board, are required for you to have a strategic advantage at your operating level for your business?
Oh, we have a board. We had a fiduciary board. I didn't know it was fiduciary. It's my brother-in-law, my husband, and I, and then we getting the adult children in. And we have a great advisory board. Great. We paid a guy a lot of money, and he got some good board members for us. So we're good to go on that.
Yeah, Dutch's board is fiduciary. We tried advisory around 2012 and decided it was a good idea to have people sort of on the hook.
Do you mind if I ask, was there a tipping point where expanding the board seemed to make sense from a business standpoint?
You're dealing with my brother and my husband and myself, and then the adult children. And they, you know, like we're a family business, so one of the guys is from Amway. We've got somebody from SC Johnson. And so it's been really great, our board. We've tried to get a number of private companies, and we meet 4 times a year, and it's great. But it's advisory. And I think they'd have a hard time if it was fiduciary. I don't think first generation, they struggle with that.
For us, we have a lot of outside advisors that we've called in to help us with things, particularly with our generation. And we are currently having a lot of discussion about bringing on independent directors, and we think maybe this year's the year to pull the trigger on it, but we haven't gotten to that point yet. But we're learning a lot from other larger family businesses and all the benefits of it. And everybody's very open to it, and we think we're ready to do that. So, but we haven't done it yet.
Roger, you
Building your facilities right across the state line there, and a small little company right across the other side of the expressway. Did you find it difficult to get associates for your facility there?
No.
Really?
No. I think our Wisconsin workforce is the best workforce we have, too. I mean, we go from Monterey, Mexico to Edmonton. I mean, we have a lot of good people. Are you up there?
Yeah.
Are you having a hard time?
Those were left by Sheboygan. And yes,
Sheboygan's tough.
Their unemployment is 2.9 right now.
Yeah, it's tough. And you get into a lot of opiate problems in these rural areas, and that's rough up. I've heard Sheboygan's rough. Yeah. Okay. How do you put it? The economy might be a little cooler now. You know, a little cooled off since last year. So hopefully things will get better up there. I sure do like to go to the Kohler Club. We take a lot of family up there so we can get away from New Line and do our business discussions.
Another great family business. All right, one last question before we wrap it up. Thank you.
I'm curious. So when I first moved to Chicago, I worked for a family business, 4 or 5 generations downtown. I won't say their name. But I'm curious of the myth of family and business doesn't work. How were you able to sustain that and be successful?
I think the most important thing is that you love what you do. I think beyond that, it's really important that you get your priorities straight. So we try to really emphasize, you know, these priorities of faith and then family and then work. If you get those out of whack, everything gets out of whack. And so our faith for us has been sort of the bedrock that keeps us all grounded and sober-minded and, you know, sort of the right perspective on life. And we challenge each other and try to hold each other accountable to keeping sort of our priorities straight, because the business can sort of eat you up and spit you out kind of thing, and part of it is because we love it so much, you know. But you got to make sure that it's not something that owns you, and I think because it'll just lead to burnout. So for us, we really try to make sure that, you know, we're in the right place, that we love what we do, we're getting along with each other, and we get along with each other when our priorities are in order.
Yeah, you take it.
I work for the family.
Wait, what's the question again? I was
Family.
thinking about the cable
He
bill or
said
something.
There's a myth that family and business don't mix, and how have you been able to sustain that?
Sometimes I feel sorry for the in-laws, you know, because we get together and we just start talking about the business and start talking about the business, and then we roll over to politics. So, you know, we're into it. Okay, I don't know. So we kind of share that. Okay. All right.
Any thoughts on what keeps the Duchossois family successful from your viewpoint?
You know, I think they having gone through this round of interviews of each generation, someone mentioned they're very proud of their legacy. They're very proud of what their family has been able to do in business and philanthropically. It means a lot to them. It's in their blood, and I think that those two things have just sort of kept them together.
Well, I'll just wrap up by offering the kind of researcher and practitioner's perspective on that, and that really is that families that succeed across generations nurture their family relationships. They have great intention and great pride in what they do together as an enterprise, and they have commitment to adapt to the changing business environment around them. They don't get kind of orientation locked. They meet the challenges that they face, and they're committed to a set of values and being together in enterprise together. So please join me in thanking our panelists. Thank you for hosting us here. It's a wonderful facility. Appreciate your hospitality.
So before you go, I'll save the most important thing for last. Feel free to go back downstairs to 20 and gather your stuff or have another glass of wine. The appetizers and wine are still out. If you want to leave directly, you don't have to go, and in order to do that, you have to go back around the way we came. If you want to just leave directly, you can hit this elevator right here and go down to 2 and see your way out. But I do want to thank you all for being here. And most importantly, I want to thank the Executives Club, Margaret's CEO, and the rest of the staff for helping put this together. They made it very easy for me to look good at hosting an event. Thank you.